Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Almost Normal. I am in my book girl era. I don't really know how this happened. I don't know when the transformation occurred, but I can say with confidence, I will get as or possibly even more excited going into a bookshop, going into a Daunt Books, going into a Waterstones, going into a Barnes & Nobles, as I would if I were to walk into a thrift store, into a Goodwill, into a Savers, into a donation shop. I will get as or more excited going into one of those places. And I will say this too. I have been traveling for the past 2 months. I have mostly been in Europe. The thrifting culture and experiences in Europe are nothing like the ones in Los Angeles, where I usually habitate. They are just not on the same level. So it is possible that due to the lack of good thrifting shops, I have sort of swapped in my addiction for books at the moment. And maybe when I go back to LA in a week or two, I will revert back to who I used to be. But for now, it's books. It's books, it's feminist books, it's self-help books. Walking into that store and getting that smell of the pages, there's something delicious about that. And I am obsessed. I'm obsessed with the book covers. I'm obsessed with the fact that they always smell a little bit like coffee. I'm obsessed with the fact that everyone's really quiet. I just don't know. There's something about the atmosphere of a bookshop that I'm very into at the moment. So, as I said, particularly feminist or self-help books. And do you know what's so interesting is that I have seen such a trend in self-help books. I've seen such a trend in people recommending self-help books. Atomic Habits or Let Them. Those are self-help books. Those are books that help you and guide you through life in order for you to be happier and to have a better life, to live your best life, okay? And I remember this scene from Sex and the City, which is actually such a problematic TV show. I never really realized until now, but I remember this one scene where Charlotte, possibly Miranda, needed to go get a self-help book. So she walks into the bookstore and someone says, "Hi, miss, can I help you find anything?" And she's like, "Oh, no, I don't need anything. I'm just browsing, I'm just browsing these cookbooks or whatever." She picks up a cookbook and she starts walking around pretending to read it. And then she finds it. She finds the self-help section of the bookstore, and it is this dark, scary place. They put horror music over top of it, and it's like some sort of mental institute with a bunch of people sitting and crying on the floor, rocking themselves back and forth, and she steps into it very frightened and in a moment just decides to run out of the bookshop because she just cannot bring herself to pick up a self-help book. And it is just so interesting that there was such a weird stigma about stuff like that. I feel like there was even a stigma about therapy in that TV show where Carrie didn't want a therapist because she felt like she shopped and had friends and she didn't need a therapist. I don't know. They obviously didn't really want a lot of help in that show. But I just think it's so interesting that now there is an obvious trend in people referring others to literal self-help books and how it's such a movement at the moment that everyone wants to get involved with, including me, obviously. So anyway, my last purchase was this, Manifest. 7 Steps to Living Your Best Life by Roxy Nafusi. I hope I pronounced that properly. There are things in my life that I don't have. And I like to be a grateful person, okay? I really try and write my gratitude lists in the morning or in the evening whenever I remember them. I really try and wake up and say, I am so happy that I have this, and this. I even said the other day, which is so true, but hard to remember, that I may not have everything I want right now, but I certainly have everything I wanted 5 years ago. And that is absolutely true, okay? Because 5 years ago, I was a fucking crazy mess of a person, an insane, should have been institutionalized person. I was not a nice person. I was a very selfish person, but I also was very people pleasing at the same time because I just needed everyone to like me. And if anyone didn't like me, it was like an explosion went off. I was just not like the person that one would want to hang out with, and I understand that. I didn't even really want to hang out with myself, and I felt like I was incapable of literally everything, okay? And I felt like the path I had chosen was the path that I will be going on for the rest of my life, and obviously it was not a very happy time in my life, and so, you know, it was dark, and I saw a long stretch of darkness ahead of me. Something within me made a change. Don't know what it was, okay? It certainly wasn't myself. I may give myself credit a little bit now to the way my life has turned out, but like, I don't know what flipped in me initially because I really felt like I had nothing to live for, so I don't even know why. That is just like a whole other mystery in my life. I don't know what caused me to make a change, but something did. Anyway, here we are today. How did I start this sentence? What the fuck was I saying? I picked up this book. I'm reading it. Manifesting. Oh yeah, manifesting. I picked up this book about manifesting because, again, yes, I'm a very grateful person. But there are some things in my life that I don't have. And I, after moving to LA, heard so much about manifesting. I don't think I ever heard it ever in my life when I was living in London. People are not really like that there. Maybe now that the trends have come overseas. But when I moved to LA, there was a lot about manifesting, about making mood boards, about saying what you want, speaking it into existence kind of thing. And I was like, what the fuck is everyone talking about? And I didn't do it because I was just like, I think this is a waste of time. Now that, you know, I have tried and failed many times in my life, I'm like, why don't we just give this a go? So I saw this book and I was like, fuck it, let's just go. Let's just try. And it's very interesting, okay? It's very interesting. But I am particularly interested right now on the chapter about fear and doubts, okay? Fear and doubts. Starts this book to say, you know, be clear in your vision, okay? You've got to figure out what exactly you want in order to manifest it, obviously. But I am more at the moment into the second chapter, which is remove fear and doubt. Remove it, okay? And that's the end of the episode. No, I'm joking. Remove fear and doubt. Now, I feel over time, I have said to myself, you are incapable, you are a loser, you are ugly, you will never be able to do this, and this, oh, and this, okay? And I have told myself those things so many times that they have just become part of who I am, and they are unshakable. It's very hard to get rid of those things, and I don't really think I'm doing much to try until today. Okay, until I picked up this motherfucking book and I was like, oh, okay, that's what's wrong with me. All right, understood. I got it. There are things that I believe about myself that have no evidence backing them except for the fact that I have told myself that they are true. And if you tell yourself something enough, you're gonna believe it. And we write these stories of our lives. And there aren't just the things that we tell ourselves. There are also so many events in our lives where other people have told us things. Okay, so for example, when I was in high school, I was always told that I was really fucking bad at math. And I was really fucking bad basically at anything in the academia world. Just wasn't for me. I was a creative, okay, I couldn't do French, I couldn't do English, I couldn't do fucking anything. Physics, biology, it was all bad. And so I was always told, just be a creative, okay, just focus on the art room, play with paints and pens and paper, and that's sort of your thing, and let's not change that, and don't try anything else. Like, it's a waste of time, basically. And so I spent years believing these things, you know. I would be given opportunities and I would chuck them away because I'd be like, oh, no, that is just not for me, honestly. Like, you don't want me to do that, I am incapable of that completely. And it's so interesting because I never even really tried. And so I don't really understand where all these people got their ideas from. Maybe I had like one bad maths test once and that completely changed who I thought I was as a human being. I don't know. The evidence is minimal. The evidence is very, very minimal. But anyway, I was told these things, okay? And I believe them. And I probably still believe them today. And let me just say this one thing. I have spoken to some of these adults now, as an adult myself. I have spoken to some of these adults who said these things to me. And let me tell you one thing, they don't even fucking remember saying any of this stuff to me. They don't remember a word of it. And so I have literally dictated my life. I have started to dictate who I am as a human being based on things that these people don't even remember saying. And I have just been living my life believing them, and they have just completely forgotten. And at that point, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe that's not who I am then, because you guys don't even remember saying that. So that's very interesting to me. Anyway, denial is not just a river in Egypt. We put the things that we say to ourselves, and we take these events that other people have said to us and other experiences, and we create these stories. And there is a psychologist called Dan McAdams, and he calls humans storytelling animals. He says that we do not remember random facts, but what we do is we arrange these memories and create a full story, okay? So with heroes, villains, plot twists, turning points, climaxes, like all of it. We don't just remember random little events, we put them all together in a timeline and we create a movie for ourselves. And he says that our identity is based on the story of our lives that we tell ourselves happened. And he also says that a lot of events can be interpreted in different ways. So, for example, let's say two people take a test and they both fail. One person leaves that room saying, I failed because I'm incompetent, I am unable to do these things. And another person, the other person that failed the test and leaves, says, oh, I failed, but I still survived. And so that convinces him that he's resilient, whereas the other person is convincing themselves that they are incompetent. And that will transform the story, because that's either like a turning point story where I realize that I'm this big, great, resilient hero, or I could convince myself that I am this small little loser who failed, and that's all I'm ever going to do in my life. I'm just going to fail. So Dan McAdams, the psychologist, says that there is a lot of interpretation when it comes to our stories. However, human beings will remember the negative things far more than we will remember the positives. And this is a universal thing every single human being goes through. And I used to think that I just had such low self-esteem because I was like, why do I remember everything rude someone says to me and I never remember anything good someone says to me? Like, what is wrong with me? I literally just must not believe in myself at all because I'm not absorbing these good positive things. I'm only absorbing the negative ones. Like, what is wrong with me? But there is actually nothing wrong with you. It is just a natural part of our brain, okay? And all it is doing is protecting us. When we were cavemen, we didn't know much about shit. Didn't know what to eat, what not to eat, what to drink. We didn't know what animals were dangerous. We didn't know anything, okay? So let's say we're going through the forest one day and we see this red, shiny berry on the tree. We'd never seen it before and we're fucking hungry. So we're like, let's see if we can discover this as a new dessert snack, all right, for us. So we try it and it gives us the shits, all right? And so that is a memory. That's a negative memory. But that's a very useful negative memory, okay? We're going to say, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to store this up in my brain because I don't really want to do that again because getting the shits was very, very unpleasant. So I'm going to remember that, all right? Let's say we're walking through a field and our friend gets eaten by some weird antelope figure. We'll remember that and we'll say, hey, that was a negative experience. I don't want that to happen again. I'm going to remember not to go near that animal again because I just saw it eat my friend and that was bad. We're going to store that, okay? And that is useful information for survival. And our brains still work the same way. When we were cavemen, we were walking down the beach and there was a beautiful sunset. We would notice the sunset, but it wasn't as important to hold in that information. It was just not very important. It was not helping us survive, saying, oh, I'm going to remember this beautiful sunset. I'm going to remember these happy times with my families. It just wasn't useful. It just didn't help us. It didn't help us survive. And as cavemen, a lot of our existence was purely surviving. It was purely just trying to stay alive and continue the human existence. That was basically all we really wanted to do. So our brains today still work the same. This is called the brain negativity bias, and our brains still work the same way today. And it is literally just a defense mechanism. Not as useful nowadays as it used to be, but it works just the same. A psychologist called Rick Hansen said that the brain is velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive experiences. So just remember that. There's nothing wrong with you. Your self-esteem is great. You're just doing exactly what nature is making you do. And that's literally why one criticism will outweigh 1,000 positives, because your brain is just surviving. Scientifically, a negative event will activate your amygdala, which is a little bit in your brain, and it'll say danger's happening. And we'll get that when someone tells us we look ugly or something, or we fail something, or whatever. We will get a rush of panic or an abnormal feeling due to any of those events, just like we would when we ate a poison berry and we had to sit on the toilet for a while. The amygdala lights up and then stores the memory, and the more intense the feeling, the more it'll store it. Another thing to remember is that every time you resurface a memory, we change it. A memory is never exactly the same in our heads as how it actually happened. And there is no limit in our brains. In the actual physical experience, maybe a 10-foot monster did not appear at the scene. However, our brain is able to tell us that it did. And so whenever we resurface a memory, we literally have no limitations as to what our brain could think of. And then we will be convinced that that really did happen. And so that's another important thing to remember. That is just how your brain works. And so if you experience something negative and then you start to resurface it over and over again, which you will do because human beings can be very obsessive and we can ruminate a lot, our memories will become worse and worse and worse. And the emotion that we had will become worse and worse and worse. And then we will be more and more afraid of it each time we resurface the memory. So another thing to remember is that usually your experiences were not as bad as your brain is telling you. So if you felt sad that you failed this exam or whatever, you probably didn't feel as bad during the time, okay? So it's not as scary as your brain is telling you it is. So redo that exam, okay? You can do it, I promise you. Redo the exam. You can still do it. Why am I saying all this, okay? Why am I saying all of this? Yes, I am asking myself the very same question. We can convince ourselves that we are unable to do certain things due to who we think we are, and we can use those things as a crutch. We can say, I'm not good at that, so I'm not going to try it, because it's safer that way. We know we won't fail if we don't even try. But that is just holding us back completely. We have to relearn who we are. We have to relearn who we are every single day. I don't even think you're the same person as you were yesterday, okay? I genuinely believe every single day you wake up as a brand new person. So how can we be holding on to ideas of who we are from 15 years old, 20 years old, however? How can we be holding on to ideas of ourselves and limiting ourselves due to those ideas when we genuinely wake up every day as a brand new person? We can't limit ourselves. We have to try. We have to try new experiences. We need to learn about ourselves. We need to get to know ourselves. There are so many things that I thought I would never be able to do, ever in my life. And I let myself get out of my comfort zone slightly through the help of a lot of people, okay? These were not decisions I made on my own. I needed people to tell me that it was possible. And I only met a lot of those people recently in my life. I can't say I had many people in my life before telling me that things were possible that I thought were impossible. Very, very recently in my life have I had major cheerleaders on my side. And I've even had people who I used to know turn into cheerleaders recently, because there's a maturity in that, okay? People need to grow and understand themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But all I'm saying is, very recently in my life, and I'm 27, have I been able to sort of step out of my comfort zone. And it feels fucking terrifying, because you're like, if I fail this thing, then I'm like, yeah, I told you I couldn't do it, and look what happened. Now I feel like a piece of shit. But you should turn that around and say, at least I fucking tried, you know? At least I fucking tried. And maybe there's another reason that they didn't use my essay in this book or whatever. Maybe there's another reason that they didn't invite me to this thing. Maybe there's another reason that I didn't get that part. Maybe it's not all about me. Maybe it's not completely because I did something wrong. And maybe I can use this, and maybe I can be more resilient, and maybe it can build me a little bigger. I think that we need to move past who we think we are in every sense of the word. And sometimes it'll take a bunch of tries. Even if you try something new and you succeed at it, you might still not believe that is who you are. You may not believe it, okay? It may take a bunch of reinforcing for that to become a norm in your brain, and that's fine too. So if you try something new and succeed at it and you still feel like that's not who you are, that's okay. Sometimes it takes way more tries. We feel safer when we just stay in our boxes. We feel safer. We feel like we can't fail, but it also holds us back so badly. It keeps you safe, but it keeps you stuck as well. Human beings are also very consistent creatures, okay? We crave consistency, we crave habit, we crave routine. And so it feels safer to stay the same person because it's consistent, even if that person is completely outdated to who we actually are. So all we do is we keep reenacting the same scenes, do the same things that we've convinced that we can do, that we're convinced that we are, just because it feels safer. It's all about just feeling safer. It's all about just feeling comforted. And your brain wants you to feel comforted, okay? And when it says, oh, I'm going to remember this negative thing because it gave you an abnormal reaction, that was useful when it was life and death scenarios, okay? That was useful when it was like, please don't eat this pear because it'll kill you, all right? It was useful then. It's less useful now. The emotions that people have nowadays when they're told that they're not good enough, when they fail an exam or anything like that, the emotions that we feel are so high, and that's completely normal, but our brain just takes that information in and says, okay, I'm going to remind you not to ever do that again because it might kill you, but it's not going to kill you. A lot of these situations are not life and death. And your brain doesn't know that. Your brain is literally just doing what it evolutionarily has learned. And so it's kind of our job to tell it to work a different way. It's never going to do it on its own. It's never going to say, oh, you know what? Yeah, let's actually try that really scary thing again. Because it doesn't actually know exactly what you did. It just knows that whatever you did caused a weird reaction that it didn't like. It's never going to convince you to try and do it again. Ever. So you have to be the one to say, look, I know this was scary, but we're going to try one more time. And we're going to rejig that memory. And we are going to convince ourselves that we are capable of doing these things and we can do these things, actually. We have to activate our brains, okay? Our brains have a default mode, DMN, okay? Our brains, when we are not actively using them, switches to the default mode. And this default mode loves anxiety, it loves regret, it loves ruminating on bad things that have happened, which is why when you lie in bed, suddenly you're like drowned by all of these embarrassing experiences you've ever had and you literally can't sleep because you're like, what the fuck is going on? You know those memes where it's a person lying in bed and suddenly they're like, wait, I haven't seen this sweater in 25 years, and suddenly they can't sleep. Like, that's literally what it is. Your brain is just on default mode, and its default mode is to remind you of all the scary things that have happened because it wants to protect you. We have to be the rulers of our minds, and I really do think that you can be. And as someone with severe anxiety, severe OCD, I never thought that I could control my thoughts. Sounded great, sounded like exactly what I wanted, to tell my brain, no, I didn't do this, no, I didn't do that, no, this isn't going to happen. But it's really, really hard, and it remains hard, and it's an ongoing battle. It's never going to be something that I can just do. But, like, it is possible. And that's another thing, okay? Even things like that, like I never thought overcoming OCD was anything possible. That was ingrained in my identity, okay? Being someone with OCD, being someone with debilitating OCD, someone who was so unable to get over things, who could not ruminate. It was never in the cards for me. And I suffer with OCD every single day still, but I can manage it. It can get better. Like, I used to not be able to get out of bed due to it because I was so afraid of the world. My fear systems had been turned on so high that I couldn't do a thing. And now I can live a pretty regular life with my little quirks, let's just say. I think something we can really focus on is flipping the script, changing the narrative, resurfacing memories that hurt us and reevaluating them and interpret them in a different way and say, okay, maybe I failed this, but it doesn't matter. I will take that as a moment of resilience, okay? I will take that as a moment of courage, that I was able to walk out of that exam with my head held high, and I didn't just die in that exam hall. That didn't happen. I didn't. I'm still living, and I should take that as the memory and not the fact that I'm a loser and I'm incompetent. Anyway, your brain is constantly rewiring, and there are neural pathways that we continuously go down because we are creatures of habit, but the less we use them, the weaker they get, and the stronger the new ones get every time we rehearse things, every time we say things to ourselves. Words of affirmation, okay? Come up with phrases that you tell yourself every single morning, and you will genuinely just change the way your brain works, and you will convince yourself that you are capable of doing crazy things that you never thought you were capable of doing before, okay? Negative bias is the reason that negative things feel more true than others, but it doesn't mean it's true. I'm going to give you one more example of something that I always believed of myself, and that is that I would never get a college degree. I would never get a college degree. It was just not in the cards for me. I would never get it. It would be useless because I wouldn't get a job. How could I ever get a job? The idea of getting a job and like supporting myself was just never in the cards for me at such a young age too. Such a young age. And I never went to college, okay? For a really long time. Then I had cheerleaders at my back, okay? I had cheerleaders telling me that I could do it. And now, in like 3 weeks, I'll be going into my last year of college. That is just not something that I ever thought was possible. Ever. And I needed other people to convince me otherwise, definitely. But I think we can do that on our own. We can be our own cheerleaders. I really do believe that. Having other cheerleaders is very helpful, but like you can be your own cheerleader and crazy things can happen. You only have one life. Just like fucking go and do it. Fucking go and do it. Seriously. There's so many cool things that you can do. Do not hold yourself back. You are not who you think you are. The call is coming from inside of the house. Okay, I'm gonna go now, but rewrite your fucking story, okay? You are not who you think you are. Seriously. We are a new person every single day. New opportunities arise every single fucking day. Let's take them. Let's take them. Okay. I'm gonna go now. I love you guys. I love you guys. Here's a challenge. Okay. This week, do something that you never thought you could do, okay? And it could be the smallest fucking thing. Ooh, another one. All right, this is so fucking random, all right? My whole life, I've convinced myself that I fucking hate charcuterie boards, okay? And now there's this whole trend about charcuterie boards, and I'm like, what the fuck's going on? They're disgusting, okay? Cold meats and cheese, yuck. But it's kind of weird because sometimes I eat cheese and I like it. Sometimes I eat cold cuts and I like it. The idea of a charcuterie board is like the last thing I ever wanted. It makes no sense, okay? I convinced myself of that. Maybe this week I'll eat a charcuterie board, okay? Could be just as small as that. Slowly creeping your way out of your little comfort box. All right, anyway, I'm gonna go now. I love you guys so much. I will see you next time. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do. And I will see you next time. Do one thing this week that scares you. Let me know what it is in the comments, okay? I love you guys. I'll see you later.